Good evening, everyone. I suppose my own name is John Macnamara. I'm chairperson of Grass10. And I suppose, first of all, I'd like to welcome you all here this evening for, I suppose, the webinar as part of our Nutrient Management Week. I suppose, look, already this week, there's been numerous podcasts and videos that I suppose, number one, I suppose, very grateful that people have viewed them. And I suppose, and tonight is probably going to be no different. Tonight, we're probably just, I suppose, look, basically trying to help you. And I'm including myself in that as well. He's just trying to help, I suppose, farmers in general, I suppose, just to, I suppose, improve your own farm, just that bit better than maybe what you had it last year. And I think that's all we're trying to do. I suppose there's no one looking for perfection here. It's basically just trying to improve what you're at. And I suppose, look, no better time of the year to do that than probably to, at the January time. So I suppose, look, tonight we're lucky enough to be joined by, I suppose, our technical guy, Seán McMahon from Grassland Agro, and I suppose John Maher as well, the Grass10 Programme Manager as well. So, John and Seán, thank you for joining us, and I suppose we very much appreciate your assistance tonight as well. Before we start, I suppose I'd like to encourage you to, first of all, I'd like to say to you that this, I suppose, webinar is being recorded. So you will get an opportunity maybe, over the coming days, or certainly early next week, to hear it back. And I suppose I'd like this tonight to be more of a conversation rather than, anyone, I suppose, talking for basically too long. So what I mean by that is, from my own point of view, even as a farmer, I feel it'd be much better for, farmers to get, a lot more out of it, where we just keep it nice and short. Answers are short and simple, and we keep plenty of questions coming in. So I suppose I'd encourage you to, keep the questions coming in on the chat forum, and you have that opportunity to do it. And hopefully we get to as many questions as we can. And I suppose there's been lots of questions coming in over the last number of days through the social media channels. And I suppose I'd like to thank the Grass10 team for, coordinating questions and putting them together for us tonight as well. So without further ado, Seán, I suppose I'd like to go on to the first question. You might have one or two slides there for us, but I think it's easier to keep this on straight on questions, and let's see how we go. Is that fair enough? Seán, welcome. I suppose the first question comes to us. It comes to us from Jack in Kilkenny, right, County Kilkenny. I suppose, look, it's been in the news, over and back a bit in the last fortnight, and I suppose, look, to try and get an answer on it tonight, is like this CBAM tax. I suppose the tax on the fertiliser, like where is this going to go, and how the danger here is maybe, Seán, what's this going to add, say to protected urea, and where could it go in the foreseeable future?
Thanks, John. I was struggling to get unmuted there, and you're after starting with a great question. It's a pity. It's a pity they unmuted me. Yeah, CBAM. So look, it's complex. I suppose it's created a lot of confusion in the last couple of weeks, John, to be honest, because the CBAM has come into effect since the 1st of January 2026. And what has created the confusion in the last couple of weeks is that Brussels came out to say that they were proposing to suspend tariffs from the most favoured nations. And basically the tariffs that they were looking at was tariffs on urea and ammonia to those most favoured nations. But ultimately, that has very little impact on Ireland, because for the raw materials that Ireland is importing, it's not from those most favoured nations. So to answer your question very simply and be short and sweet about it, CBAM is here until further notice. And the question, I think, referred to protected urea. How much is it going to cost or add to protected urea? And it's going to add approximately €50 per tonne. So that's going to be on imports from the 1st of January. So I suppose there's certain fertiliser that's moving at the moment that was maybe imported in 2025, and that merchants maybe had contracts and farmers purchased product prior to 2026, and that was fertiliser that was imported into the country in 2025, so that didn't have CBAM on it. But any fertiliser as of now that is coming in and is in the country since the 1st of January 2026 will have CBAM on it. And I would expect prices to move on in the next week or so, in the next couple of days.
Okay, so Sean, like, what are we looking at here? Are we looking at more of a reality here, so than anything as such that we can do with it? Like, it's just, I suppose I won't say it's disappointing because it's just we know it's going to be a difficult year for farmers cost wise.
Yeah.
As in it's going to be an important year for farmers cost wise. You don't want to be reducing your fertilizer, certainly not your P and K, and suddenly we're being hit with this at the start of the year.
Definitely, yeah. No, this year and any year, look, we don't want to compromise on soil fertility and growing as much grass as we can. And look, it is disappointing, but I suppose we can only control the controllables. It's here to stay. And just a little bit of a background to CBAM, really, it more affects urea as opposed to CAN. I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, but ultimately 80 to 90% of the urea that is used in the EU is imported outside the EU. And I suppose for fertilizer manufacturers in Ireland, and we're just talking about fertilizer here, but there's other industries that's affected by this CBAM as well, cement being one. But from a fertilizer point of view, there is more regulations around carbon in the EU than outside the EU. And in an attempt to, I suppose, prevent carbon leakage, so maybe non-regulated or if there's very little regulations in countries outside the EU that is producing fertilizer, and then you have countries or manufacturers within the EU that is more regulated, cost more to improve their carbon emissions and reduce their carbon emissions. Ultimately, they're just trying to affect carbon leakage. So there's a tax on these imports into the EU to try and prevent carbon leakage. So that's where the CBAM has come from. It has been in since, I think, October 2024, but it's really come into effect since the 1st of January this year. And I think it was either this week's Irish Farmers Journal or last week's Irish Farmers Journal had an article on it that the department came out to say that there's limited effect to Ireland, and that's the case. That could change in the next couple of days, John. I don't have a crystal ball, but as of now, the question was protected urea. We're looking at €50 a tonne.
Okay. Look, I suppose thanks to Jack for the question, and let's see where it goes. I suppose let's watch this space, I presume, and let you watch where the fertilizer comes from.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Sean. Sean, maybe if I stick with you, okay, because a question that can often happen, I suppose, look, not every farmer will get it, but you can get a batch of soil results back. There's one field or one couple of fields that suddenly the pH is, maybe 7.3, 7.4. I think Nigel has mentioned it here in the chat. Sean, that can lock up stuff, maybe particular phosphorus. Like, what do we deal with this? Maybe it's not a big issue across the farm, but it could be in a part of the farm. Like, is it an issue?
Yeah, we've come across it before, John. It is an issue. I suppose I'll give sort of two different examples. Say the pH of the soil is 7.3 in each example, and say you have maybe no P allowance, so it might be index 4. And then, yeah, on the other example I give, say it's index 1 or index 2 for phosphorus, so there is a requirement there. There's actually very little you can do whenever the phosphorus is at index 4. There's no chemical allowance, so and what the research said that applying chemical P onto index 4, you're not going to get a return. So that's not advised. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is what the soil test is saying to us there, right? There's enough phosphorus in the soil, but ultimately we have to try and get that phosphorus out of the soil. So one approach that I would say to that farmer, if the soil pH is 7.3 and it's a high P index, so index 3 or index 4, you're trying to, you're playing slurry little and often. What the slurry is going to do is it's going to enhance earthworm activity. You're adding that organic matter there. The soil is going to feed off that organic matter, mineralize it, mineralize the N, and also mineralize the P. When we talk about mineralization, we more often than not just talk about nitrogen, focus on nitrogen, but it's also mineralizing other nutrients, and phosphorus is a key nutrient. So the more we can get the soil humming and working for us, the more we can enhance the microbial activity. And I don't mean adding more calcium to the soil. This soil here, 7.3, it doesn't need any more calcium. But ultimately, we're trying to get the soil working that a little bit better. That's for an index 4 soil. If you take your index 1 or index 2, the problem with, say, your 18-6-12s and the 6 in particular, so that's the 6 is the P, the 18 is the N, and the K is the 12. The 6, whenever you apply that standard form of P to those high pH styles, basically the P is acidic or it's negatively charged. And the calcium, so the calcium in this case is high, the pH 7.3 is positively charged, and it acts like a magnet. So the calcium binds the phosphorus, so it doesn't make it available to the plant. So there is certain products on the market. Top Phos is a product by Grassland Agro. It's a neutral charge, so it's 100% available, and I'd be advising that farmer to look at either Top Phos in straight form, or it's available in NP and NPK products, and that phosphorus will be available and won't be locked up.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Sean. Right, and I suppose appreciate that coming in from Nigel. Maybe John Maher, Mike was in touch with us from Cork this week, John. And John, sulfur, right? Sulfur is, I suppose, an issue that always comes up at the start of each year. And I suppose Mike is saying, how important is it for clover production? And then we'll say, what's the best way to apply clover or supply sulfur on the clover sward, and when should it be done?
Yeah, it's a good question, and the clover piece makes it a bit tricky. So I'll explain. So the P and K targets for clover are the same as grass, as is sulfur. Now we know the pH for requirements of clover are a little bit higher than grass, as in 6.5 or above. Grass is about 6.2, 6.3. But the pK sulfur requirements for grass and clover are the same. So yes, we do need sulfur applied. The way we want to apply sulfur is to start in late March, early April, John, and apply it in a kind of a consistent way from late March into April, into May, into June, into July, right? And I suppose the sulfur piece is massive in terms of nitrogen use efficiency, and nitrogen comes from many sources now. So we know the fertilizer one, and that's why it's in with the fertilizer. We also know nitrogen comes from the soil, and we also nitrogen comes from clover, and clover needs sulfur to grow as well. So it's all in there. Sean will and his colleagues will tell you that sulfur is needed for the nodules, below the surface of the soil in clover as well. All those things are important. So to me, the sulfur requirements are the same as grass. We need to apply about, just keep it in farmers' language, 16 to 20 units by early July. In order to get that out, you have to start early on time. What people forget is that slurry is a very low source of sulfur, so the fertilizer is needed. We go back 20, 25 years ago, and we were getting a lot of sulfur from the atmosphere with, I don't know, we'll call it emissions from cars, trucks, whatever the case would be.
Yeah.
So all that's cleaned up. So now we need sulfur from another source. And so the idea is to start on time. Now, the challenge here, John, with clover is that, you'll apply on a clover sward, you'll start applying your slurry and fertilizer early on, February, March, and into April. But when you get into the mid-season, then, and the clover is good enough, if you're over 20% in the month of April, then you're on the pig's back, really, and you'll start cutting back at the nitrogen. And if you use a product like, I'll just do a simple one, protected urea plus 2 or 3% sulfur, you're never going to reach the target then that we outlined. So this is where Sean comes in and choice of product, Sean. So I'd suggest that just, I did this on very quickly, John. If you do 38.07, you'll be all out on a good clover sward to get enough sulfur out, right? Starting on time. So choice of product is important here. I think you bring Sean in this one, John, if you don't mind.
Yeah. I'll come in. I'll come back to you in 1 minute, John. Right, but will you just, because Emily's just been on as well, right, during the week, like what other benefits, John? Before I go to Sean on the products, what other benefits, we'll say, other than obviously, in a clover mix, what other benefits can clover give us?
So I suppose, like I just talked about grazing, right? And the main thing here is the growth of the plants that we touched on, but the main thing here is the nitrogen use efficiency. So like if we don't have sulfur in the mix, we have, without getting complicated about it, John, losses of nitrogen. So we don't want that, right? The next piece of jigsaw is, we didn't mention that about silage cutting, John, and like we need 10 to 12 units per acre applied for silage, John. If you do your 2,500, 3,000 gallons of slurry, John, you will not have enough sulfur in that to do that, right? Again, it's about growing the crop, and the thing that's often forgotten about sulfur is the building block of protein, John. So if we want good protein in our silage, we need the sulfur piece in the mix as well. So that's another benefit. Now, on the other hand, John, the sulfur is a story like it has to be front loaded in the first half of the season. Sulfur leaches like hell. Applying sulfur in, back end of the year. You
probably missed the trick at that stage.
Yeah, wasting your time.
Okay.
It'll be leached and heavily leached. It's very, very easily lost. So that's why we outlined the strategy we did. start late March, early April, all the way through to early July.
Okay, perfect. Seán, can I bring you back in? Seán, what products should I use here? What products should the farmers use here to, to get this, so that the sulfur is not an issue and that we're on top of it?
Yeah, well, there's NPKs there that you can go with if you have a P allowance on the grazing block, say if we take it with sulfur in it. If it's not, if there's no, say if it's high P's index 4 for P and K, John mentioned there sort of like a protected urea product. I think it was, I don't know which one, it was a 38% urea you mentioned, Eco 38, John, with 7 sulfur.
7.5%, yes.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say there,
Seán, as you know well now, just to be clear, there are other products with protected urea that have a low amount of sulfur. So that's the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the challenge. And I suppose, like, whenever you get to May, June, John, whenever you're reducing your nitrogen down, how far are you reducing it down to? Like, is it 10, 12 units? Because depending on the product that you're going with, there's practicalities to that too. What I mean by that is that, say, if we're trying to get a good bit of sulfur out, and say the product maybe to do that in the straight end product is the Eco 38 plus the 7 sulfur. But going with a half a bag, John Corbett is a fertiliser calibration expert in Grassland Agro, as you all know. And what John would say is, regardless of the product, whenever you're going to try and apply half a bag to the acre of any product, but particularly urea-based products, it's very, very difficult to get it accurate. So, by going with a half a bag of your Eco 38, that's 19 units of N. If you're, say, playing 10 or 12 units or want to play 10 or 12, you're going down to 0.4, 0.3 of a bag of that Eco 38. So you might have to revise product selection. You might have to go to if it's protected urea, you're looking for maybe a 29 or 14 with sulfur. Do you get what I'm trying to say, John? Or maybe John Mac, you might come in there on maybe what your plan is for your clover on the farm.
Yeah, Seán, and I suppose, 3 years ago, Seán, maybe I had no clover on the farm, and I suppose I'm learning on it as well. The only one thing I would say that I would agree with what John Maher said there, that it's so important to have it out sort of in the early part of the year. So I'd be trying to make sure, like I've been using that for 38007 for probably a good number of years now, certainly since protected urea started. And I've been probably using that at least a bag and a half, so a half maybe like, sort of that early March, and then coming in with maybe a bag, at the end of March time. So, and then I'm, anytime I'm using that 29014, because my P allowance would be very small, I'd be making sure there's sulfur on it as well. So, I'd be just trying to make sure that I at least get, that 2 or 3 rounds, in that first half of the year would have sulfur included in it. And it seems to make a difference. I suppose what I've seen is the paddocks that don't get it, and or the ones maybe that wouldn't get enough or would be lacking in the sulfur, it's very obvious to see it. So I think certainly over the years I've learned the importance of it.
And the only thing I'd add before you come in there, John, is to back to, I think the question was maybe, is it as important in clover as grass? What I'd say to that is, whenever you're planning your fertilizer application, say in March and April, best case scenario in a grazing sward with clover, and you're probably going to have 20% at that time of year, 25% clover. So there's 75-80% grass. So that grass needs sulfur. But as you mentioned, John Maher, the sulfur, the nodules, to develop the nodules and grow the nodules that's fixing the bacteria from the atmosphere in the clover plant, they need sulfur as well. And it's also very important nutrient for microbial activity and mineralization. So it's as important in clover as it is in perennial ryegrass.
Yeah, thanks, Seán. John, will you come in 1 minute again? Because Willie was in touch from County Meath as well, and he's kind of saying, he's on about Hinton performance. Like, maybe is he saying we may not get enough nitrogen out if we're concentrating too much on the sulfur?
So a few things very quickly, I suppose, just to add in, John, on the previous question. If the pH is low, does the sulfur lock up? It does a bit. Now, it's not as bad as the phosphorus. We know if you've low pH, phosphorus lockup is massive. But there is a level of lockup, but not bad. And as Seán outlined, it can be easily fixed, right? The other thing about underperforming paddocks, John, often it's misdiagnosed, right? Sulfur leads to paleness, and some people say, I've low K or I've low this. It's actually just lack of nitrogen because the sulfur wasn't there in the first place, even though you applied enough nitrogen in theory. To follow on then on Willie's comments, John, about underperformance of animals and stuff like that, and underperformance, So like we do some, as Sean will know, some work with the French researchers and their knowledges of soil now, John, and you've met some of them, like they're phenomenal now, and in terms of the knowledge of soil, and they when they go back a few years ago, John, when we used to outline the sulfur strategy, because you go back years ago, you had sulfate ammonia and those kind of products, you know,
Yeah.
and you're putting out a lot of sulfur at once, they would be horrified by that type of stuff. So what you're trying to do, John, is drip feed this all the way late March, April, into May, into June, into July, and not overdo it. And there are other products out there, like I'll pick one now that, you know, like ASN has a nice bit of sulfur in it, and then all of a sudden you apply a bag of that. You're applying a lot of sulfur in a very, very short time, and asking a lot of the soil and asking a lot of the plant. And you know, it's not fair to the animal either when you think about it. So,
Yeah.
so the thing here with the animal piece is if we do slow and steady and keep it going through the main growing season of April, May, June, July, then we're not too bad. There are unique situations, John, that have challenges around, you know, maybe availability. I'll just pick the obvious one is copper, and people get
Yes.
worried about if I overdo the sulfur, I'm going to lock up copper. So the first thing is not to overdo the sulfur. That's the
Yeah.
first thing,
True.
right? And overdo it is two things now, John. Is not go with a product like ASN, in my view, in a
Yeah.
big quantity. And
Yeah.
the second thing is not to go beyond the 20 units that myself and Sean have outlined.
Yes.
It's not unusual for us to see people spreading 35 and 40 units. And they went off and bought the fertilizer. Oh yeah, give me sulfur. And the next thing they have disapplied, and they've applied double what they're supposed to do, John. So that's playing with fire now, right?
Okay,
Especially
so
if there's issues. So
Yeah.
the way to fix the animal piece then, John, if there is an animal, is to make sure that whatever minerals you're using or feeding or every approach, that there's, you know, the right copper and to protect the copper in there to counterbalance this, in my view.
Okay, so the answer on sulfur, John, is to drip feed little and often March, April, May.
June, July.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Okay. Can I just move on, right? Because a lot of farmers, right, including myself, are getting soil results back, you know, this month. We'll say maybe taking it into December, taking early January, results coming back at the moment. Aoife from Galway has been in touch during the week, right? So Aoife is saying, like, what's the, and maybe Sean might even come in here first, like, what is, we'll say, you know, the optimum, you know, that her soil needs to be at, and how does she tailor a plan to make sure she's getting maximum return from her fertilizer?
To try and simplify it for you, John, so mineral soils, 6.3, 6.5 pH, peat soils in and around 5.8 pH, clover swards, 6.5, 6.8 pH, P's and K's, index 3s and index 4s. Very simple. And the only thing I would say is that different parts of the country have peaty soils. Just it's something that I suppose at this time of year, whenever we're getting soil results back, and that when it comes to potash is a very important nutrient. The potash indexes for peaty soils is that bit different to mineral soils. So your mineral soils for potash, index 1 is say 0 to 50, whereas index 1 for peaty soils is 0 to 100. So it's just for any farmers that is listening to this, that is peaty soils. If you're struggling to build potash, it's maybe you're not applying enough, or you're maybe defaulting to the mineral index system when you should be defaulting to the peat one.
Yeah, okay. Can I just, Sean, could I get you to maybe just refresh again, or just repeat again for me, just on the lime part of it, right? Because the lime is crucial here. So, like, is there a part of the country that, when you say mineral soils versus non-mineral soils, is there a part of the country that refers to, or is that just, you know, can you just repeat again the mineral versus non-mineral and what that pH should
well, there's different. I suppose your peaty soils and your clay soils, you know, they require different pHs. So your clay soils, your sandy soils require 6.3, 6.5 for perennial ryegrass, and your peaty soils, which is your soils that is over 20% organic matter.
Okay.
The optimum pH is 5.8 for those soils. Now, you can have farms at anywhere in the country, John, and you know, soils, it may not be peaty ground, but it's coming back, clay soils, heavy clay soils coming back 5.4, 5.5, 5.6 pH, and you know, there's a massive problem there. The soils, we should never get depleted by that much for lime. We need to go little and often, and it's maintain. The amount of money that farms that have pHs of 5.5, 5.6, 5.7 pH that are losing out, not getting the value of the nutrients they're applying in the bag.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and like I've got a lot of questions myself from farmers over the last fortnight as well. Just to stay on the line piece a minute, Seán, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Like, so just bring it back another step, or keep it as simple as we can. We get a reading of 5.9, we get a reading of 6. What, like 2 ton to the acre? Does that guarantee us a 6.3 the next?
It's just not as simple as that. So
Yeah, okay,
on the soil reports, there's a buffer pH as well. So there's a water pH, which is the pH. If I asked you, John, what the pH of your soil is, you'd be reading the water pH. But the buffer pH then is a different pH, and it determines what the lime requirement is per hectare. And
yes,
the figures may not in certain cases be the same figure.
okay,
So it's the buffer pH that calculates what the lime requirement is. And in a lot of cases, if you have a water pH, say of around 6.2, 6.3, you will be getting that recommendation of a ton and a half, 2 tons to the acre, but not
okay,
in all cases. And some farmers might come back and they might see a pH reading on the water, a water pH of 6.2, 6.3, and they might think that they're going to have a lime requirement on the report, and it doesn't, because that's got to do with the buffer pH. So it's just, I suppose, it's one to look out for if you are getting soil reports back. Number one, make sure that either there's a Lipis parcel number on the report for each soil sample, or georeference longitude and latitude coordinates, because that's a new regulation that came in this year. Because
yes.
if that's not on it, John, your defaulted index 4 for P, regardless if it's index 1, index 2, index 3 that's showing up in the report. So that's important. But the other important one is to, if you need lime, address it sooner rather than later. And I suppose that maybe, John Maher, we might talk a little bit on when the best time to apply lime is, be it granulated products or ground limestone.
Yeah, so exactly. And John, before you come in, yeah, so hopefully that answers Aoife's question some bit, because it's crucial that we don't sort of, forget about lime. Like, it has to be number one. And in a year where
Yeah.
we need to get the most out of our fertilizer, we got to start with it. So, John Maher, can you come back in, because John has been on there from Roscommon as well over the last 2 days, and I suppose his concern is, like, where is our window to get this lime out? And because is there a danger it interacts with slurry, it interacts with protected urea, and without complicating it, John, where can we find the opportunity to spread the lime? As in, what time of the year and when can we do it?
Okay, well, to me, John, you can do it all year round, to be honest with you.
Okay.
The classic approach to lime in the country, which needs to change, John, because we have a long way to go on this, from both, an agricultural point of view, but an environmental point of view. We're supposed to be double the amount of lime that we are at the moment, and we haven't come next to near that since 1982 or 83. That'll tell you how far behind we were. But anyway, to make a long story short, John, the main way of applying lime in the country, unfortunately, is this, John. We'll wait till the autumn. The animals are off the farm. We're on, a low growth period. Then we hope we get the weather to spread it. We hope the contractor comes. We hope the lime is in the yard, and we hope we can travel the land without damaging it. That's an awful lot of hope, John. And unfortunately, most people opt out because 1, 2, or 3 of those just don't go your way. So then, to me, you have to be an opportunist. Now, we covered this in one of the podcasts with Micah Hearn, I suppose, yesterday, and that's there and how he goes about it. And he is an opportunist. And in order to get lime out here, John, it's like trying to eat an elephant. It's you have to eat this in a good few chunks. So that, like, if the weather was good at the moment, John, and the ground was travelable, you take this opportunity now. And I wouldn't care whether it's grazing ground or size ground, John. There would be a great opportunity if you could travel. The weather won't allow that, so you have to wait for the next opportunity. Reseeding is a classic place to try and get lime out, John. Then there's there still might be chances in February and March to get lime out. You're on long rotation. There's plenty of rainfall, help to wash it in, all that. We come to maybe crop of bales in May, lovely clean swards, John. You have opportunity there. If if you're not doing second cut on a piece of land and you do your first cut, another opportunity there. There's chances when you have clean swards during the summer to spread the lime.
Yeah.
There's more opportunity, and into the autumn on longer rotations. So there's loads of opportunity, but you just got to plan this.
Yes.
Now, often the reasons for not spreading the lime, then, John, are availability of contractor or availability of weather.
Yes.
But there are other ones then as well, John, which are the ones you mentioned. Oh, I spread slurry, so I can't spread lime.
Yeah.
Like, just a quick rule of thumb that I learned from my colleague John Conroy anyway is, so when you're getting into all these things, slurry, fertilizer, what do I do with lime? Lime starts with an L, John, so it's very easy to remember. L for last. Right. Slurry
Okay.
first. Let the bit of rain fall on it. Give it a few days, 7, 10 days, 2 weeks. Let the rain fall. Then apply the lime.
The
Same
lime.
with same with say fertilizer, John. If you're worried about it, fertilizer
Yeah.
first, lime
Okay.
second, right? And you know that it's washed in. Now, you know, we'll bring Seán in here on the protected urea piece, which adds another twist with lime because it's protected. You have a chance here as well. But look, let's be clear, John. Slurry first, fertilizer first, lime last, and then you have no great worries about this, right?
Yes.
Just be clear here. Like this, if you apply the slurry and from the P&K point of view, there's no risk here at all. The risk is on the nitrogen side. If the slurry and the lime interact, you get lots of nitrogen. But anyway, lime second, slurry first. Let a bit of weather pass over, and then off we go.
Yeah.
So there's no issue.
Did you say, John, that you could go up between first and second coat if you weren't going for second coat? Did I pick you up right there?
Absolutely, yeah. So some
So
people have
explain that.
some people get nervous about applying lime to silage ground, John, because you know you're trying to, you know, I don't because the swards are clean and there's enough rain to work against it. But in this country anyway, but if you're doing first cut but not doing second cut, you have bare ground, John. It's just a great chance to get lime out. Do you know? Lovely
Okay.
clean ground. If I go to parts of the country, Seán will know this. Like, you know, I work in another program or do bits and pieces with heavy land, John. Sure, their opportunity to spread lime in the back end and the front end is very, very
Okay.
limited. So they have to be opportunists. Their best chance, John, is this clean ground after silage. And it's a massive opportunity. Clean ground,
Yes.
solid ground underneath you.
Yeah.
God Almighty, it's a gift. A
Yes.
gift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John, what about grazed paddocks? We'll say, you know, milking cows gone back on, you know, what about grazed paddocks? Like, because often
Yeah,
that can
this,
be, you know,
yeah, this is an opportunity, but John, I have to state this.
yeah.
If you're good at grassland management, this will work for you, right? So,
Okay.
well,
So
I basically
explain.
explain. Yes, if you go into the right grass and the cows graze down well, John,
Yeah.
this was covered yesterday in the podcast with Michael Hearn.
Yes.
Great,
I
great
heard
man
it.
to
Yeah.
graze, great man to graze the right grass.
Yeah.
Sward is clean, applies his lime, and the rain, as he said, surely comes.
Yeah.
Grant. So
Okay.
the risk here for farmers is, oh God, you know, I'll contaminate the grass or the
Yeah.
cows won't like it. But if the sward is clean, John, there's no contamination.
Okay, you see, I just find, right, and I bring myself into this, right? So lime is another job to be done on the farm, okay?
Yeah.
So we have to believe, like, you know, what it's worth to us. So I just find, how can we make it easier then to spread it, right? So obviously you've answered the question, you've answered the timing. So I'm looking at what maybe I can do to make it simpler this year. And I suppose I'm looking at, like, I'm not going to stop reseeding myself this year, so I'm going to reseed the same as always, and it's an April reseed, right? So what I'm looking at is, can I put an extra load of lime in the yard at that stage? The lime spreader's coming
100%.
in. He's doing the reseeded field anyway. Can I
Yeah.
do 3 or 4 paddocks that are well grazed? You know,
Of course you can.
and I suppose that's how I'm trying to see. The contractor's not that busy yet, right? It's April, and you know, it's a chance to do it. I'm getting my 3 or 4 low paddocks covered. I know I have my plan. I know what I need. And is that an opportunity maybe that, you know, that I could work this year? That's what I've looked at my own place.
Yeah, and often the reseeding happens after the main tillage work is done, John. There's an opportunity here. The contractors are available. You come in, you're doing a reseed. You can buy, you know,
Yeah.
2 lorry loads of lime and do another bit with it, you know, to be
Yeah,
honest.
I just think, you know, we get the soil wells back and suddenly, you know, the year can pass and we just don't act on it, you know. So I've tried to see, can I simplify it for myself? Because I'm no different than most people on the call tonight. It's a job, it has to be done, it has to work into a rotation, and you need to be able to do it. Seán, can you come in just quickly? Because I know it's come back on 1 or 2 more questions tonight again. Just what about the protected urea versus the lime, you say, Seán?
Yeah,
Just
so
quickly,
I suppose, yeah, very quickly. So just we'll take normal urea first because I suppose now at the moment, some from the 1st of January that it's straight urea is prohibited in Ireland. But basically, whenever you apply urea, normal urea, unprotected urea, when it starts to break down, it has to transform into ammonium and then nitrate. And during that process, when the urea enzymes is transforming the urea granule into an available form of N, there's a massive pH spike, and that's where the losses of ammonia occur. So what happened if you, I suppose, add lime into that? Lime is obviously increasing the pH on top of that process, which is going to lead to a lot of losses. So that's historically why farmers might have been nervous. With protected urea, there's been work done in a lot of the Teagasc sites, and you treat protected urea the same way as you treat CAN or slurry, either 7 days or 10 days before, or 7 or 10 days after. Don't let it be an excuse not to apply lime. And when we get our soils up to whatever we think is optimum for the farm, whether it's 6.3, 6.4, 6.5, maintain, don't let it drop.
Okay, super stuff. There is one or two more questions that I'll come back to, Sean, that have come in during the week, but just one that's come in like tonight as well, right? Just from Adrian there. So, like, obviously he's got a P allowance. There's lots of phosphorus products out there, right? We'll say, I suppose some claim to be protected phosphorus, but they're a lot more expensive, Sean, than your regular 18612, you know. So someone, like even my own case, would say, look, I have a small P allowance, so I've always been using 18612, you know. But like, how do we know if these products with the protected are better? And if they are better, you know, the value versus the 18612, you know, because to me, an 18612 is a really good product. So, you know, can you explain what, you know?
Yeah, look, I suppose the 18612 is a very good product, but if you're applying 18612 to low P indexes and high potash indexes, I question the value you're getting of the 12 in the potash. So that's when we talked about putting the soil plan or the fertilizer plan together. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is we're trying to batch all our low indexes into one group and earmarking them. As John said earlier, put 50 to 75% of your phosphorus allowance out early on in the springtime. Phosphorus is key to root development. It's sort of the ignition. It gets the grass plant growing and it increases rooting and tillering. The protected products or a product like Top Phos that's on the market, like I said, I think it was Nigel's question at the start of the webinar. There are certain situations where you will have phosphorus lockup, and phosphorus lockup will occur in low pHs or high pHs. And the product that I mentioned about Top Phos, it's neutrally charged, so it can't be bound in the soil. So it's more available than your standard P products. And with a lot of products, not just fertilizer, different products the farmers are buying, you know, you can try a portion of the farm, see how it works in your farm. One farmer might get X amount of yield response, another farmer may get a small bit more. But ultimately, if you're having a problem and you think that phosphorus availability is an issue and it's getting locked up, or you're applying 18612, you have a big P allowance and you're not seeing of benefit and you're questioning the benefit, you know, you're going to have to try something different, because ultimately what you're doing is not working.
Okay, so like hopefully that answers Adrian's question, because like I suppose it's a year where people are going to be watching their costs, you know, but you don't want to cut back at the P in case you want to be putting out the right product. So I suppose what you're saying there, Sean, is like that really, you know, he could be working with, you know, he should be trying out different stuff here in the paddocks himself and see.
If it's not working what you're doing, if you're trying to target P and it's not working, John, you're going to have to change tack. Like the farmer, a lot of farmers is trying and chasing to chasing index 3s and index 4s. And what we find, particularly in silage ground, in a lot of cases, is that they're just not the offtakes. Maybe they're saying that there's a 5-ton crop coming off the first cut and there's a 4-ton crop coming off second. In reality, it's maybe 6.5 ton, and maybe 5, depending on the year, depending on the conditions, depending on when it's cut, so on and so forth. And you know, really, what's happening is that there's not enough potash going on, and we're just not quantifying the offtakes. But whenever you're looking for the small margins, you have to dig a bit deeper into the info and put more of a detailed plan in place, John.
Yeah, okay. And look, I suppose every farm is different, and maybe in Adrian's case, yeah, like his farm is different from, you know, people up and down the road from him. And I've the same, I suppose I've tried it, Sean, over the years where, you know, you take all the research, you get all the knowledge, but you probably have to go and try stuff on your own farm in different paddocks and see how it works.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Really important as well. Just, I suppose, I don't know whether maybe, Sean, maybe it's for you again a minute. It just came in during the week as well. Like, how long will say, I think it was Sean, Tom and Kildare said it, sorry Tom, and I appreciate all the questions that came in during the week because it gave us a great start on tonight's webinar. How quick does nitrogen work, we'll say, versus slurry work, or, you know, P's and K's? Like, what works the best, or what works the fastest, or, you know, how do we get, you know, what gives us our best bang for our buck, we'll say here, providing now that we've the pH right, you know, what's the product here that, you know, maybe we should all be using?
Yeah, well, look, I suppose I think in this example, the farmer is questioning the availability or how the response that they're going to get from slurry and the NP and Ks in slurry as opposed to chemical fertilizer. I think the figure, John Maher, correct me if I'm wrong, did you have 1,000 gallons of slurry at 6% dry matter is 9,532? Is that what it is?
Thereabouts. We won't argue, Sean. Yep.
Yeah, so I suppose with that, focus on the nitrogen first. So that 9 units, that's, I suppose, tested in the lab. So we know that that's in the tanker, but ultimately, whenever that's applied, there is going to be small losses. And on top of that, the 9 is what's available straight away. So that 9 units and that 9,530 or 32, that the example per 1,000 gallons, that should be available straight away. There is nitrogen there in the background. So whenever a lot of fertilizer these days, or a lot of slurry these days, is applied by low emission slurry spreading, and we can see the dribble bar or the trail and shoe and the lines in the field and the organic matter that's left on the soil surface. That is nitrogen that's going to be made available maybe in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months time. Ultimately, the worms and the microbes has to work that into the soil, mineralize it, and make it available. So I suppose there's that 9,532 that we're quoting, that's in 1,000 gallons of slurry, and that's thick slurry. That'll be 6% dry matter slurry. That 9 is available straight away, but it's the same. It's on the bag. It's 18,612 on the bag, but if pH is at 6, it's more 18,312, and it's the same for slurry. John Maher, I don't know, maybe you want to comment or add into that.
Yeah,
John, you want to come in? Yeah.
Yeah, the problem if the pH is low, like we get lockup of P in particular. Yeah, so that's a concern, and it's locked up fairly fast now. This is not months, this is weeks, and maybe even days, depending how bad the pH is. So yes, and there is a level of lockup of K as well. So the advantage of the slurry source, I suppose, is that it's a lot more resistant to lockup where the pH is low. And like if you're for whatever reason stuck on the pH story and you have a choice of fertilizer or slurry, you should always go the slurry road. John, I want to throw in the piece there about the lime as well. That you buy the 2 or 3 loads when you're doing the reseeding. Yep. If you don't get to do the other parts of it, John, you can always cover it over with plastic, and it's in the yard. Another day will come, especially for people who have maybe a smaller scale and trying to buy those loads. I do know some of the contractors, they actually love the lime wet because it's much easier spreads. So, I can say cover it with plastic, but there's others who love it wet because to get down the dust. So yeah, but there's opportunity here, John. Yes, that's the point, I suppose. Yeah.
It's just look. It's just the benefits of lime, John. It's just so important. So all I was trying to do was make it easier for us.
Yes.
When I say us, I mean,
just
to get it out. I suppose a question has come up, right? I suppose, John, maybe I might bring you in here first, right? So a question has come up. It's come up in my own discussion group as well. Where guys are looking now, we'll say, with nitrogen. With all the nitrogen on the registrar. And I suppose with the stocking rates and the lower end fertilizer that we are allowed to put out, we'll say, what time of the year do we get the best value for this nitrogen? And how much should be out like by April, May, we'll say. And I suppose, I'd have my own thinkings on this as well. And should we be keeping more of it to the end of the year? Maybe if the first half, if the first 2 months are cold, and how do we? I suppose, and I've learned over the years myself, right, without going into maybe figures as such a minute, that if you're too far behind, even to go with a match scenario, if you're too far behind at half time, it's very hard to win the second half. And a bit like that.
100%. So it's a very good analogy. Explain this, John.
Yeah, so will you put a few figures on it? Like, I mean, I can come in and say
you must be thinking of Limerick playing Dublin here or something, John, on that one. But
no.
Sorry,
but
I couldn't resist.
Yeah, okay. Let's we're in a new year now, John. Let's bring it back to a couple of figures, right? So
fine.
So what should go by the 1st of April? What should go February, March, and April, and what should be out for the 1st of May? Combined slurry nitrogen. And how important is that second half of the year then, obviously, as a result?
Yeah, so the background to this is fairly simple, John. If we want to grow the tons of grass that we, like 2025, apart from the southern rim, John, was a very good grass growing year, is right up there as one of the best for the last 10 years, right? We know that. And we grew over 13 tons. If you want to grow that level of grass, John, the total nitrogen sum for that from a balance sheet point of view is well over 400 kilos, right? We're spreading somewhere, nice round numbers, just keep it simple. 200 kilos of nitrogen per hectare.
Okay.
The 200 has to come from elsewhere, John, right? And the biggest source of that is the soil.
Okay.
Now, the catch with the soil is that the soil doesn't release the nitrogen at the same rate throughout the season. As the soil warms up, the bugs work better and release more. So there's a reason why then, John, that when you talk about application of fertilizer, we are biased to front load because, let's be clear, the soil temperatures in March are much different to the soil temperatures in June or July, right? And you're going to get more release from the soil in the summer months than you will in the spring months. So we're trying to, and there's a lot of research going on here, John, as trying to, and in Teagasc, trying to get that balance right. And broadly speaking, John, right? Okay, we are trying to get between fertilizer and slurry, John, about 75 kilos per hectare, or in simple terms, John, about 60 units of nitrogen now between fertilizer and slurry by early April. And I suppose I'll go to 80 units, John, by the 1st of May, or 100 kilos. Broad targets, right? If you're on heavy land, the February application is going to be questionable, and the target is probably close to 80. It's right. Yeah, 60 units by the 1st of May, right? You'll let the first one go because just the land is too wet and cold. So then, someone like me, then John, would love. This is the wish list for someone like me who sits in an office discussing something like this and not at farm level. But I'll explain my logic, and it's very simple. So if I want 60 units by early April between fertilizer and slurry, John, I'd like something to go in late January and early February. That's a combination of slurry and fertilizer. I'd love another bit at the end of February, early March, and another bit at the end of March, early April. Why am I saying that? I am doing that, John, to maximize response and minimize risk. Right. Now, some people say to me, Jesus, John, that's fine for you. You want the maximum and the minimum out of it, minimize risk, maximize response in order to get the best out of it. And there's a bit of tractor work involved. And if you're very busy at that time of year, which you are, then I'll take that on the chin and let you split it in two and do, and we are splitting, John. We are splitting. So if I just did no slurry and just did the fertilizer story very, very quickly, we'd probably aim for 20 units in February, John, and about 35, 40 units in March. That's how we would do it. I asked for the extra split, which was, splitting the 40 into two 20s, right? And it's another job, but that's how we maximize response. And there's people here in Moore Park, John, who have looked at this, putting more out in February, less in March, splitting a 50-50. I just did 2/3 or 1/3, 2/3, and that's where the optimum is, to maximize response, minimize risk. So, John, down to the money now, and this is covered with Mike Ahern today in his podcast, right?
Yeah, I heard it,
So very, very quickly, round numbers, John, right? Okay, if I just go on a per hectare basis and we apply our half bag of urea per acre, which in a hectare basis, you're spending about 30 euros per hectare, right? And even a mediocre response, John, right? You're going to get 60 back in grass. Now, just explain. The grass values vary through the season. And the reason why the grass values vary, even though the responses are modest in February, March, now they get better as the season goes on, right? You are displacing big cost feeds, John. I don't need to tell you about the cost of meal and the cost of silage, where they've gone over the last number of years. And look at the feed costs on dairy farms. Like, they're making up a huge part of the bill. So if you can displace them with even modest responses, John, this twists very much in your favor. And I went conservative there. If I go back to last spring, John, it'll be the economics would even be better than 2-to-1 that I outlined there. So I got 60, cost me 30. If I go back to last spring, John, I'd say it cost you less than 30 and I got over 75. So we're not going with a large amount, but we're going with enough to get a response and make it economic. And just one last piece, John, that's always forgot. Even though you apply fertilizer in February and in March, John, a bit like your first half, second half, there is a carryover, and that's never counted, and that is worth a bit as well. And don't forget it.
Yeah. Okay. John, I appreciate that. And I suppose from my own point of view, I have found over the years, John, it needs something just to get it started.
Completely.
And if you don't get that out until, late March, early April, you've probably missed that period. And then, following on from Mike Ahern's point today, like, then you're behind on the grass grows, you're behind in the grass, and you got to fill the gap somewhere else, and it gets costly. But the thing, what I've always tried to do at home is, you don't have to go out in every paddock, you see.
No.
And I don't think that's why I said at the start, we're not looking for perfection here. It's about just improving. So, I mean, if you can even get this nitrogen out like on half the farm, and get that working that bit better this year, and then see where it goes. See, can you see that's doing better when it comes to April, especially when the pinch comes on like that second half of March, early April. So that's why that bit of nitrogen in February helps you to, alleviate that pinch somewhere, because, the second nitrogen is almost working at 100% when you put it out in March, John. And that's,
Yeah,
I suppose I've
100%.
learned that the hard way as well. So, and I hope that answered the person's question here tonight. Just maybe can I go back like to Seán? And I suppose before I go to Seán, I suppose look, we're probably over 45 minutes on the webinar already. So but I really appreciate, like, it's very easy to do these webinars when the questions come in. So I do really appreciate the questions coming in, because we had a lot in before tonight. But the questions coming in, as we go through tonight is really, really good to see as well. Seán, there's one here, and this will, resonate with a lot of farmers as well, where there's no P allowance, right? On the farm. What can he do? We'll say, he, she do at reseeding time, when you can't use 10-10-20, like always before, the old sort of scenario was 3 bags of 10-10-20 at reseeding time. Has that changed now? Obviously, it has changed when you don't have a P allowance. So what's the product to be used in that case, Seán?
Yeah, look, I think if there is 0 P allowance for the farm, there's only really 2 options. It's a straight nitrogen with a bit of sulfur, or it's an NK with sulfur. And I think John Maher, I think I heard you saying on one of the podcast there this week, if you have a small bit of a P allowance, you're probably saving it for the reseed to try and get the grass seed established. But you've really only 2 options, John. It's either a straight M product. If I had my choice, I'd be going with an NK with a bit of sulfur.
Yes.
There are two other twists now, John, that we need to be aware of here as well, just to be clear now. Right. Yeah. We've given you what you can do, but there's also very important what you don't do.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So let's be clear here now.
Yeah.
Yes, that's why we need to do this. Right. If you have no P allowance, and the chances that the reason you have no P allowance is more than likely your indexes are good.
Yes.
Right. Or for whatever reason you fed a lot of meal and you have no allowance. Right. And you decide to reseed in the month of April, John, and you've indexed 3 and 4 and you've no P allowance, and you decide to plough. Now, John, we are playing with fire. We have just no P allowance, and we've just buried our P.
Yeah, okay.
That when you have no P allowance, I know people love ploughing, and it does other things for the soil, and if you've damaged land, I get all that. But if you plough down the P and no P allowance, John, good God, you're just doing the wrong thing, unfortunately. Right?
Okay.
The other twist then that Seán alluded to earlier is the release of P and K from the soil with lime, right? And even if you even if you were reseeding, John, and doing the surface technique, and you trash in the surface and apply a little bit of lime, it might actually just release a small bit more P and K that would help, right?
Okay.
I'll go back to Michael Carroll's podcast as well, John, on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And
Tuesday.
the way he handles slurry, right? And he's clever about it. 4 tanks in the yard. They all have different variations in P's and K's, and and water content. Where if you wanted to, I suppose the real catch I'm after here, if you're index 3 or 4, you have a bit of money in the bank. But if you're index 1 or 2, for whatever reason, don't have a phosphorus allowance, and your index are just not where you want them to be, don't have a P allowance, and you obviously don't want to plough, right? If I got the good slurry, John, and got it applied onto the surface before I start working machines on the surface, at least I'm supplying a level of P and K as well, if that makes sense. Yeah.
So
it's bringing P in the back door now. Now, it's not for everybody, but you get my point.
Yeah. So John, there's been a query back to us here. So maybe you want to think about it for a minute there, because I want to go to Seán, because I actually missed the question that been in earlier in the week, right? Why would someone have no P allowance, John, right? So I'll come back to you in a second on it, because David has been touching Monaghan. Seán, can I bring you in here, because often, we'll say, going back a number of years, people would have always used cut sward for, certainly for second cut silage, maybe even for first cut silage, Seán. But the problem seems to be that David has found here that basically maybe since he's gone to protected urea and slurry, that he's lower protein in the silage, maybe lower yields in the silage, why hasn't he been able to hold the same, Seán?
I presume the reason why David changed the products was maybe that he has maybe no P allowance now, is it? Or is he has high P's and K's maybe? If that is the case, previously he was using pasture sward, so pasture sward is 27, 2.5, 5 in and around NP and K, and now he's changed to protected urea. The question that I would ask there, is there sulfur? That's the thing that's missing from here. We know that the nitrogen and sulfur, as John mentioned earlier, converts the nitrogen in the leaf to protein, and it's also drives on yield. So sulfur is very important for driving on yield, especially in free draining soils, not so much in clay soils, but definitely in more free drain and sandy soils. So that's the key one. Is there sulfur? And that's probably what's lacking. If there is sulfur and this farmer is still struggling and is putting it down to maybe a straight end product and slurry and not getting the yields, there is other products out there that has biostimulants in them, the likes of sulfamo 30, that will improve the conversion or speed up the conversion of nitrogen plant to protein, and will drive on yield as well. That's maybe something that they need to look at. But sulfur, John, I'd say is the key one there.
Yeah, because for David there, like Sean, I mean, looking at the figures you gave us earlier, of that 9, I was at 5, you said for P, and 32 for K for 1,000, at the 6% dry matter for the slurry. Most farmers now are understand that the slurry needs to get back on the silage ground, and obviously from a cost point of view as well. So a lot of farmers, I'd say, are gone down that route. So it's good to hear, David has obviously been very honest here, because he's testing his silage. The results are not as good as well. So hopefully, David, maybe the sulfur, might be the answer here.
What I'd say on that as well, John, right, is that for any farmer and that has a field that's maybe underperforming, take the spade out, dig a sod, turn the sod, see what it's like.
Yeah.
And even go to one of your better performing fields, have a look and see what the sod looks like, and then go to one of maybe the poor performing ones. Because if there's compaction there,
so compaction is what he's looking for, Sean.
Well, you're looking for compaction because we see, we're visiting hundreds of farms every day, and what we see is that farmers are coming to us and saying, my P's and K's is index 4, but I'm not growing the grass. We turn the sod, compaction. If there's no roots there, or roots is being inhibited by compaction, it's not accessing the nutrients. If you don't access the nutrients, you're not going to grow the grass.
Okay. Yeah, John, will you come back? Perfect. Thanks, Sean. John, will you come back in there? Because I've probably a second question to you as well about protected urea and phosphorus not being used together. But do you want to come in? Why would someone have no P allowance, John?
Yeah, I see that question coming from Sinead there.
Yeah. Sorry, I missed her name. Thanks, Sinead.
Yeah. But we often get asked it. I'll do the classic tree, John, right? Just to answer your question. The first reason is if all the indexes are good, John, at 3 and 4, you're not going to get an allowance, even though you might there is an allowance for reseeding now. I don't deny that. But look, John, I don't need to tell you the amount of meal fed in 2025 is 1.4 tons. That brings a lot of phosphorus into the farm, John. That's the way the sums are done. And if you feed a lot of meal and your high indexes, John, there's going to be no room for P allowance. And there is a lot of P in that ration, John, coming in.
Yeah. No, we understand that, yeah.
Right. They're the main two. So high indexes and a lot of meal coming in, or a bit of both, right? Whatever you call it. And the third one is, for whatever reason, there's no soil samples done within the time frame that you're supposed to have them done. And therefore, if you, like Sean outlined earlier, if the soil sample's not done, you're assumed high index. And if you're assumed high index, you've no P allowance. They're the classic 3 reasons. Sean, do you want to add? I think they're the classic 3 reasons.
The only thing I'd say to add into that, John, is that you mentioned that, I suppose, the concentrate figure. So very simply, the way the P calculation is done is that the programs take the number of hectares that's index 1, the number of hectares index 2, number of hectares index 3, and index 4. And depending on your stocking rate, you're given an allowance per index 1, 2, 3, and 4. You get your initial P allowance, and then whenever you add the meal in, for every livestock unit on your farm, you get 300 kilos of a meal allowance per livestock unit. But basically, as you said, John, ultimately, if you're feeding a concentrate, you could start off with
per cow.
If you start off with say 500 kilos of a P allowance, then you add the meal in, that could diminish that 500 kilos straight away. And even if you have reseeding ground to be done, that doesn't automatically mean that you'll get that 15 kilos of P per hectare, because you could be in a minus scenario. So say, for example, you were starting and your phosphorus allowance in this example was 500, but because you're importing and feeding so much meal, I'm bringing it onto the farm, that's P onto the farm, maybe that was 600 that needs to be deducted, so you're minus 100. So even having 2 or 3 hectares of grassland and you're getting the 15 kilos of P, you're still in a minus scenario.
Now you know, John, why I want the good slurry to go back in the reseeded ground.
Like
that's where the P is.
Yeah, 100%, John. Am I right, guys, in saying that P allowance is only applicable to the derogation farmers, we'll say?
P allowance is any farmer.
We'll say linked to the derogation farmer, like.
Any farmer.
No, it's all farms. Josh,
it's all farms. It's all farms. The P build up is for all farms over 130 kilos. So it's just for any farmer maybe that has got soil results back, that maybe hasn't availed of the P build up in years gone by. That you'll get an extra 30 kilos at index 1 and 20 kilos at index 2. And in this year, if there's P needed, we need to apply it, because we're going to see a response. And the same with K. If there's K required, there's going to get a response.
John, just to say this, the fundamental here is, right, and we come across it all the time. If you don't soil test, John, you don't know where you are. And if you don't know where you are, you won't get the allowance. You have to soil test.
You have to soil test 100%. Yeah, and it's just that knowledge, and by soil testing as well, John, it just keeps you interested in what's out there.
100%.
And it helps you to actually walk the farm. It helps you in the utilization of the grass, and it helps you when it comes to spreading the fertilizer as well, because you know what needs what, like, and I see Mike, you spoke about Mike Ahern already, John, and Mike has the different color, covers at each gap to show what's low in P and what's low in K and whatever, and what's high in clover. So it's just a few symbols like that around the farm, even just to
it just help.
It just helps. An interesting question here. I just don't have the name where it came in, who sent it in, right? But it says if my pH is ideal, right now, obviously it doesn't say what pH is ideal, but let's take it at 6.5, okay? Index 3 and 4s in the P and K, right? Grazing again is doing well, so there's a lot of stuff here that we don't have sort of figures on. I mean, is this farmer growing 15 ton of grass? That we're not told that. We're not told it's pH 6.5. They're saying they're doing their best with clover, right? Which is fair comment. Clover is a learning experience. I can understand that completely. Yep. Where do I go next? Okay. So I suppose what they're looking for here is, how do they keep making progress, right? Now, my quick answer when I saw the question coming in first is, repeat it. Can you maintain the paddocks at that level? Can you repeat it? Can you repeat this again next year? Can you make sure that you keep the maintenance, the proper maintenance there, and to make sure that you keep it in index 3 and 4, because that's a challenge in itself. Obviously, this person seems to want a bigger challenge, as in they're beginning to look at micronutrients and look at a couple of other things. I possibly would rather them, to go and repeat what they're doing, because I think if you take your eye off the ball and make it too complicated, you just go backwards. So I'd be saying, you get something in place, repeat it.
100%. I suppose I'll just throw in a few quick comments here, John. Just so that if we want to do that 13, 14 tons, right, John, just very, very quickly, right, you need somewhere between 16, 20 units of P applied per acre on nothing to do with size now, John, just a grazing paddock. 16 to 20 units per P applied per acre to balance the books to grow 13 or 14 tons of grass in a grazing scenario. No cutting, right? If you cut, then in grazing we've a good degree of recycling. In cutting, there's no recycling. It's gone and it has to go back in the form of slurry or whatever. So 16 to 20 units of P, 35 units of K per acre, John, right? And the 16 to 20 units of sulfur by early July. Now I'll come down a bit in the sulfur for heavy land. Unfortunately, John, in terms of P's and K's on heavy land, I have to go up, not down on the P's and K's.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Now it's fine for me to say that, right?
Okay.
But I have to say it. The heavy land, we know that the P story requires more horsepower, not less, and the same to a degree with K, right?
Yeah.
So that's that one, John. Right. We are fortunate, and Seán will come in here now. I would say we are fortunate, John. I'm going to say this, that we are glacial soils, right? Now,
okay.
You'll ask me why I'm going here with this, right? So let's just explain very quickly. So we'll go to the next best or similar. I would be very careful with my terminology here now.
Yeah.
But anyway, grass growing nation in the world, and that's down in New Zealand, right?
Okay.
And they're largely volcanic, right?
Okay.
So we're glacial. So by glacial, as Sean alluded to earlier, there is a nice supply of P and K there in the background, right? And by default, most of the time, John, I know Pete's a different twist here, but we'll leave the Pete go for a minute. Maybe Sean make a mention on it. That's a different twist, all right. But if we do the glacial soils, the standard glacial soils, John, we have a nice bit of what we call micronutrient as well, right? And if you go to New Zealand and they're volcanic, they have trouble here. And the reason I mentioned that is because the clover plant starts to come up here, right? So if we take the nutrients that matter to clover, we mentioned the top three are very, very simple, are P, K, and calcium, which is by default lime.
Lime.
The next two that matter then are I suppose, sulfur and I suppose, I could put calcium there too, but sulfur matters. And then we get into other ones like boron, sodium. I threw in the boron one, John, because if you have a slight concern, boron is important for root crops. We all know what clover does and legumes do. They have a lot going on in the roots, right, in terms of what they do. So, John, there's a little bit more work required to this in Ireland, and maybe at times clover disappoints, and maybe we start asking questions about these, but it's small. I go back, John, to repeat and understand that if you're going to grow 13 or 14 tons of grass, 20 units of P, 35, 40 units of K, John, and 20 units of sulfur.
Yeah, 100%. Sean, do you want to come in a minute?
Just a couple of things. Just back to John Macnamara with the point that you made on repeat. 100%. That's key. Focus on the basics and perfect the basics.
Yes.
Keep it simple, because if you complicate it too much, it's going to be very hard to manage. And on the clover piece as well, it's very sensitive to pH. What I'd say is that what we see is that we've taken a lot of soil health tests and soil analysis and measuring pH, say in June and July, and comparing them against soil samples that was taken in the same fields in January and February. And what you see is a slight pH dip. And you see a slight pH dip mid-season because obviously, fertiliser is acidic, slurry is acidic. But whenever the grass plant is growing, it's emitting hydrogen ions, and that's the measure of soil pH. It's the acidity piece. So really what I'm saying is that you might think you're home and hose at a pH of 6.3 whenever you're reading the report at the kitchen table in January. But whenever you're putting out 50-60% of your fertilizer in the months April, May, June and July, the pH has dipped a small bit. And I suppose to make best use of your nutrients, you might have to revise, thinking that maybe a pH is optimal at 6.3. You might have to be aiming for 6.5 to 6.8. Well, it's 6.5 to 6.8 anyways for clover. Just keep an eye on that. And back to, I suppose, your own farm, when you're growing 15 tons, nutrients will deplete very, very quickly. So soil sampling regularly, keeping an eye on what the soil is. Ultimately, if you feed the soil, it'll grow the grass, and then the challenge is to manage it.
Yeah, 100%, Sean. Like, I would be soil sampling probably once a year now, Sean. You know what I mean? And that's just to try and that's, I suppose, coming back to that question. It's about repeating it consecutively, year in, year out, and you can't do that if you don't have the knowledge. And I think that was mentioned already. So just again, appreciate every questions, the questions coming in all evening and all week as well. There's just one here on lease land. So the last one or two, okay. Just someone leasing land, and I suppose, look, this could be appropriate to a lot of lads out there where maybe struggling to get it on a long-term lease, so maybe only leasing on a yearly basis. And wondering about how quick can they get return on lime, we'll say. So slow enough to do anything with it because it's on a yearly basis, and again, a bit reluctant on the lime. I mean, my answer here is, even on a yearly basis, the lime has to go out, but Sean, maybe you're the expert on it.
John has a good story. John Maher has a good story on this.
I do.
Yeah. We want to. I don't know how long the story is, John, but go on.
It's not. It's a quote from David Wall.
Oh, a quote is fine, John. Yeah. Okay.
It's an absolute classic, and I credit for him for it, and I'll never forget it, John. I've never forgotten it. And here's the story: you lease land, John, for 1 year, and you have it, and the pH is low, John. And, like we normally talk about 2 ton of lime per acre. His quote is simple, John. You'd be better off apply the 2 ton per acre, John, of lime to that land, right? And in doing so, John, lime's on an 18-month, 2-year cycle, right?
Yeah.
And leave 1 ton for the next person.
Okay.
Now, I think that summarizes that, John.
Yeah, 100%. So look, I appreciate that question coming in as well, and that seems to answer that, John. You know what I mean? So look,
Yeah. So we did that. We did that in the podcast during the week.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay,
So,
okay.
John, just one comment on the soil results. You know, I know we're probably preaching to converters here, but like, you know, you said you soil sample every year. John, any dairy farm at this stage, they have to be soil. The whole farm has to be soil sampled within 2 years. I don't think Sean will disagree with that statement, to be honest. This thing of 4-year cycle, 5-year cycle in the current climate, with restrictions on P's and nitrogen, it's a soil sample in a 2-year cycle minimum.
Yeah. Sean, you'd agree?
Yeah, and just back to the leased land piece. I suppose if we're leasing land, there's a reason why we're leasing it. We're looking to grow high volumes of quality grass. We're going to have to feed the soil to get those high volumes of quality grass. So you're going to have to throw the kitchen sink at it, because if you don't grow the grass, you're going to have to. The alternative is more expensive.
Yes. Okay. There's one there that came in. I might have missed it earlier on again. The one that came in around the week. Again, I just want a quick point on it from maybe either of you, just in relation to subsoiling. It came in from Paddy and Donegal. Like, any benefits to subsoiling? Just quickly, so because I have a couple of things to sum up as well. So just any benefits to subsoiling?
In a word, yes. But John, we have to start with the obvious thing. Why are we subsoiling in the first place? It means that something's gone wrong. So just
okay.
Like, you know, if something's gone wrong, and we all make mistakes and things go wrong, fine. But something's obviously gone wrong. Now, it could be weather related, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, you could be doing machinery work, and you know, we don't forget 2009, 2012. Well, I certainly don't anyway.
Yeah. Difficult years, John.
Those years, you don't forget them.
No.
So, and things can go wrong, and you know, can subsoiling do something here? Yes, is the answer, John. And I'll just give 2 classic scenarios of right and wrong here, John, just very, very quickly. Bumped into this very recently, John. Field reseeded, not performing overly well, right? Disappointed with it. Came the winter, water, it was sloped, not badly, but sloped. All the water flowing off the field onto the road. They were horrified. Couldn't figure out what was wrong. Yeah. What had they done wrong here? And the fundamental reason here, John, was simple. And no offense now to the young fellas or the young people driving tractors. No offense here, but they put on a land leveler, John, and up the field, down the field, up the field, down the field, across the field, right. And we compacted the layers, John. So they asked me to fix this. Got in the digger, John. Dug down, and all the roots were in the top 2 inches, John. It was like a carpet. I could rip it off the field.
Yeah, they couldn't go down. Okay.
Couldn't go down. So
So subsoil had a role to play there.
Now just follow me through here. Subsoil across the field, John.
Yes.
Right? Across the slope, not with the slope.
Yes.
Right? Now, downside here, John, is because we've subsoiled it, we can't go cutting bales. So you have to manage the grazing, right?
Okay.
And John, for people just who like to do a little bit of therapeutic work, the stones have to be picked, and the subsoiler in many cases will bring them up.
Okay.
But this field is transformed, John, and I'll say no more. Right?
Okay.
That's the good scenario. The bad scenario, John, is you go subsoiling on a heavy farm in the wrong time of the year, in a wet year, John, this can turn the wrong way. So just ask yourself what went wrong in the first place. Can I fix in certain situations? Yes, but be careful. Be careful.
Okay. John, thanks for that. Look, so one final question, right? And maybe Sean, you come into this one as well. Came up in my own local discussion group last week. It's interesting how we came in here again tonight. Just in reseeding in 2026. Okay. Farmers are looking like, where can they cut a few costs, right? And it was mentioned like in my own discussion group that by 1 or 2 lads that maybe they can take out reseeding. Now I went against it completely. I said, like, you know, the return on reseeding is very, very sharp. It's very, very quick. You possibly get it in a year, maybe 2 years, John, as the research. But to me, if you drop out reseeding, like, you know, you just can't do this, right? Reseeding cannot be forgotten about in 2026. And it's interesting how it came in as well tonight, because I think it's important to mention it on a webinar like this, because people are planning now, like, what they're going to reseed, and also planning where they're going to spend their money and stuff. Can I just ask the 2 of you will say, because I'm probably answering it as I'm saying it, where I'm coming from myself.
Yeah, you have.
Okay, Sean. But I suppose the point is, like, it's still an expense, right? But I suppose the point what I would like to say to you is, the people that had the problems with the drought situations over the last number of years would say to me, that it was the amount of ground that they had reseeded in 21, 22, 23, and 24. The 2 to 3 years previous to the drought, that probably got them through the drought. In an easier position. Because they still were able to get reasonably good growth rates because they had a lot of the farm reseeded. So that's, I suppose, my answer to the question. I'd like to hear, Seán, what your answer to the question and maybe John's answer. Obviously, quickly, because we've a lot done.
Yeah, you've answered it, John. If you apply fertiliser to reseeded, freshly reseeded swards, the response is going to be far superior than old perennial ryegrass. And the final thing that I'd say is that reseeding P's and K's, we need to look at it as a capital investment, not an expense. It's an investment, not an expense.
John Maher?
Yeah, the 1, 2, 3, John, I'll do the 3. So the 1 was the difficult years, John. That's the field that will grow for you, right? Yeah. We all know that. Okay. Seán's one on the response to nutrients and the nutrient, management allowances are tight. Yeah. You get the best responses from reseeds. And the third one, John, where reseeds really win is in the shoulders, start and end. And that's where the feed costs are, John. And if you can replace those feed costs, it's win-win.
Yes, 100%. And I suppose the other thing, just to simplify it for farmers again, and obviously, look, we can't talk about all the country being the same, but maybe best, John, from going out to yards and stuff. To me, I won't say there's an abundance, right? But there is a good bit of silage in yards, okay? So, to me, again, people shouldn't be afraid to take ground out for reseeding this April.
No, John, for most of the country, after a good grass growing last year, there is I won't say that now, maybe in the southern rim, John, because I know some people have fed silage since last June or July, but in the overall scheme of things, the silage stocks are good. The autumn didn't come that bad. Okay. Yeah, there's a bit of money in the bank here, John. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So let's hope. Obviously, we need a good.
It provides opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say there's a good bit of grass out there. We've had very little, cold nights over the spring, over the winter as well. Growth rates have been good.
We'll have the figures next Tuesday, John, but it's looking okay. Yeah.
Yeah, really good, John. So let's hope we get a reasonable spring to be able to use that now as well, right? So obviously and the figures you talk about, John, they'll go out in the newsletter obviously next Tuesday as well.
Next Tuesday, it's our first kind of run at this. Yep.
Yes, 100%. So I suppose that gives me an opportunity, John, to encourage people to subscribe to the Grass10 newsletter as well, because I suppose this year, John, I don't want to use the word celebrate because I don't want to, I'm not blowing about this or anything, but I suppose this year, during the year, we will have our 400th edition.
That's right.
Of the newsletter.
Summer,
this summer, which is brilliant because this is something that goes out on a weekly basis. Obviously it doesn't go out simply. There's a good bit of work going in behind it. But this is what drives farmers on because they see the information here, and I suppose they're comparing to themselves. Where do they fit in? What box are they in? And are they doing what they should be doing for the next week? So really good. So I'd encourage more people to subscribe to that and, I suppose be able to take the information from that.
Yeah, I'll just add another piece to that, John. Some people don't like opening emails. Some people get through the WhatsApp. That's fine. There is another way, John, and we do a podcast as well every week. And we try to summarize it for them. And people have different ways of getting information now, and they go driving in the car or they go doing something else in the tractor or whatever they want to do, and they turn this on at a different time, John, and listen to the summary of the newsletter in about 8, 9, 10 minutes.
Yeah, 100%, John. And I think, look, tonight's webinar, as I said at the start, has been recorded as well. So I'm sure, I suppose we'll be able to split this up in various segments as well, and people will be able to hear it maybe in one block and hear it in different segments as well from early next week on. So I think that's really good to see. And I think the progress in that, something that we've kind of linked in with as well. So it's good to see. So I suppose, can I just finish with maybe thanking everyone for their questions? And I suppose, look, there's still maybe a few questions maybe that we didn't get to, and apologies about that, but certainly we'll try and follow them up on social media as well over the next few days and try and answer them the best we can. And I suppose it's really good, John, that we continue this tonight because, you've had podcasts all week, that have been available on Spotify, and there's been videos on X and Instagram and YouTube, with farmers. You mentioned Mike Ahern, you've Mike Carroll's, you were with John Fox, and and you would fill up on as well during the week, which I think the feedback on that has been really, really good as well. So
and we've John Corbett tomorrow. Yep.
Yes, and I think Seán had mentioned that. So again, that'll probably finish a really good week. So I'd encourage as many people as possible to go back and listen to them because, as I said at the start, with my farmer's hat on, and that's I never come to any of these discussions without the farmer's hat on because I don't feel I have any role to play otherwise. That all we want to do is just get that bit better than we were maybe this time last year. And I think, by taking the information that we've got tonight, we can do that. So, John, thank you so much. And also, I suppose, to thank Sean. Sean, thank you so much as well for coming in on the technical side of things. Obviously, there's help on the sides here for me as well, so I very much appreciate that. But I suppose, John, I suppose it would be wrong for me not to mention our Grass10 team that are working behind the scenes. I suppose, all the time, and I suppose not on the screen with us tonight. So that's, I suppose, Clodagh Bulger, John Conroy, and I suppose Nicky Kennedy, who all have their various roles, but it's great to have three new people, I suppose, starting off now, John, to give a great lift to the whole grass piece and the whole grass, project, that hopefully we can deliver on. And I suppose, look, there's a brilliant year ahead there, and there's numerous different initiatives that the guys have brought on board that people will hear over the next number of months. And obviously, look, the calving will take, the majority of things for guys in February, March. But look, some of this will be ongoing, and we'll certainly pick up again, and we'll run right through the year. So I suppose I'd like to welcome on the three lads, and I suppose to encourage them to, I suppose, to look outside the box as well. And I know they'll be really good in what they're going to do for us. And I suppose my final point, before I finish, everyone, is that I suppose none of this would be possible without the stakeholders that have helped us in numerous different ways. And I suppose, look, we meet them maybe once or twice a year, but I suppose, look, we couldn't manage without them. And I suppose that's AIB, FBD, the Department of Agriculture, the Irish Farmers Journal, and I suppose Grassland Agro. So I suppose, look, we're indebted for them to keep the whole thing going as well. So look, without further ado, I suppose I'd like to close up at this stage, and I suppose wish everyone the best for 2026. And I suppose, don't forget to, to follow us on our social media outlets. So,
John, can I have one last comment before we go?
Yeah, John.
You mentioned the Grass10 newsletter, John, next week, right?
Yes.
Okay, there's a lot of people contribute to that and make it happen, and there's a lot of people who supply information, and the industry in particular, right? But anyway, we have a fabulous database and pasture base, and Caitlin is here tonight as well, John. I just want to say thank you to her as well. All right.
Okay, perfect.
So Caitlin is the coordinator of pasture base. A lot of stuff we talked about tonight, John, we wouldn't have that information without pasture base. So just to say that.
Yeah,
as well. All right, okay?
And I suppose, look, pasture base is a brilliant, tool to have in this country, John. I'd say we're the envy of the world.
Massive.
I'd say at this stage. To be quite honest about it, and I suppose always the encouragement is to try, and I'll be pushing out to the advisors there to see, can we get more people using pasture based, because the knowledge you get, especially over a number of years, be it growth rates, be it tonnage in a paddock, whatever it is, and it just keeps you a lot more interested. So yeah, John, thanks to Caitlin, and very much appreciate that as well. So thanks for that.